Okay, so now I'm going to use those techniques that we just practiced to shade actual shapes. So I'm going to shade the shapes in the same way I did before, but I'm going to choose a technique to use. So for the first one, I'm going to choose hatching. You can choose a different one if you would like, but I'm going to do hatching. Right, and so to start, I'm going to find my light source, which is going to be right here, and then I'm going to carve out a space where my highlight's going to be so that I know not to fill in that space with any kind of color. So closest to the highlight, I'm going to put my highlight right here, and so I know that that's going to be a white space. And then I'm going to start with my hatch marks, and I'm going to start with just really spaced out hatch marks because I'm trying to show a light value really close to my highlight. And I'm using a 2B, just kind of any medium value, 4B, 2B is going to work for you. Alright, and so I've got my light value done, and then as I get further away from the highlight, it's going to start to get darker, so I'm going to start adding more hatching lines. And I'm going to keep them all in the same direction. So going a little bit further from the highlight, I'm just going to start adding in a few more lines, and then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. So just slowly adding more and more lines as we get further from the highlight. And then I'm going to do the same thing. And this time I'm going a little bit closer to the edge, so my lines are getting a little bit shorter, a little bit darker. And then same thing on this side. They're going to slowly fade away from the highlight and just become a little bit more. Right, and then I'm going to add a few more on this very edge just to show that it gets darker as it curves around. And then I'm done with this side. And then on this side, I'm going to start adding in some more of those lines. And then I'm going to add even more further away. I'm starting to press down a little bit harder so I can get a little bit more pressure to show that shading. I'm just going to do a few more lines along the edge to really show that it gets dark right up along the edge. I'm actually going to take my 8B and just add a few final touches of lines along the edge to really show that it gets dark where it curves. Right, and then I've got a nice shaded cylinder with hatch marks. On the top, I'm just going to add kind of a singular value, so just like that. And that's a nice little hatched cylinder. Alright, so on my next one, I'm going to do scumbling for this one. Alright, and I'm going to find my light source, which I'm going to put in the same spot. And then I'm going to carve out my circle for my highlight, because remember, your highlight is going to be the same shape as the shape you're shading. And so if you remember with the scumbling, I'm going to start with just kind of big circular motions. So big circles all the way around. And then as I get further from my highlight, it's going to get darker, so I'm going to start adding kind of smaller, more close together circles right around my highlight. I'm going to bring that all the way out. And then I'm just going to keep doing that. Every time I get away from my highlight, I'm just going to make my circles a little bit more closer together, a little bit smaller as well. That's going to help you show that value. So up against the edge, I'm going to do really teeny tiny circles just to show that it gets dark around the edge. And then I'm just continuing my circles all the way around. So I slowly want it to get darker. So each time I move back, I'm doing smaller circles and more of them. And right up along the edge, really want to make sure I layer up my scumbling. And then I'm even going to take my 8B and I'm going to add a little bit of super dark scumbling to the edge. Alright, so with the 8B, just adding some really dark scumbles along the edge to show that our sphere is rounded and it curves around the edge. And then I've got a nice shaded scumbled sphere. Right? And then moving down into my last one, my cone. I'm going to use cross hatching for this one. I'm going to put my light source right here. And then I'm going to cut this off because that's the bottom, and I'm going to worry about the bottom later. And then I'm going to mark out my highlight, and again, my highlight is going to be the same shape as when I'm shading, so it's going to be a cone, and that's going to be where I'm not shading. And then I'm going to do the same technique as we have done this entire time. I'm going to start with bigger lines, and this time, because I'm cross-hatching, I'm also going to do lines going the other way. So then lines going this way, spaced out, and then lines going this way. Alright, and then I'm going to start moving away from my highlight and adding more and more lines. So every time I move away from that highlight, I'm adding more lines. And then move away from the highlight. Make sure you go back and forth on this one. You get the cross hatch in there.
11, 18, 25, 29, 30, or 84. Please report to the bus please now.
And then I'm just going to continue on in that exact same fashion. So I'm going to finish up that one edge with just a few more cross hatchings, and then on this side I'm going to add even more cross hatches to show that it gets darker. Each time they're just getting a little bit shorter, a little bit darker. Fix up some areas, and then I've got a nicely shaded little cone with cross hatching. And then for the bottom, I'm just going to give the bottom like a pretty even value. So I'm going to keep my lines pretty much the same width apart. And then I have my fully shaded cone.